The rain hammered the windshield like 1,000 tiny accusations, blurring the neon sign of the Last Chance Motel into a smear of red and blue regret. Sadie gripped the steering wheel tighter, her knuckles whitening against the worn leather, as thunder cracked overhead like the echo of a rifle shot she could never unhear. And there, thumb out in the downpour, stood Stella, drenched, defiant, her eyes locking onto Sadie's through the storm as if she'd been waiting her whole damn life for this pullover. Sadie had been driving aimlessly for hours. The kind of aimless that clawed at your gut after a deployment that left more ghosts than glory. Fort Lewis was behind her now. A sprawling base in Washington state that felt less like home and more like a cage she'd finally slipped. 28 years old. With a duffel bag crammed in the passenger seat holding everything she owned, dog tags, a crumpled photo of her squad, and a half-empty bottle of Jack that whispered promises she knew better than to keep. The army had carved her into something sharp, cropped auburn hair that barely brushed her ears, freckles dusting a jawline that could cut glass, and eyes the color of Pacific fog, always scanning for threats that weren't there anymore. Honorably discharged after that roadside bomb in Kandahar took her left knee and her faith in straight lines. She was heading to Portland. Or maybe nowhere. Chasing the myth of a fresh start in a country that had forgotten how to welcome its own. The woman by the roadside didn't look like she belonged in the rain. Tall, broad-shouldered in a way that spoke of carrying more than her share, with skin like polished mahogany and braids slicked back under a sodden cap. Stella, as Sadie would learn soon enough, 30 and fierce, her full lips pressed into a line that hid a smile sharp as shrapnel. She was hitching from Joint Base Lewis McChord too. Same base, different wars inside. Stella's discharge papers cited adjustment disorder, but Sadie would piece it together later, the whispers in the barracks, the stolen glances that turned into something the brass couldn't ignore. Stella's eyes, dark and deep as midnight rivers, held a storm of their own, betrayal from a lover back home who'd traded her for silence. And the army's cold shoulder when she wouldn't play pretend. Sadie slowed the old Ford pickup to a crawl, wipers slapping like a heartbeat. What the hell? She thought. One ride couldn't hurt. She leaned over, cranking down the window just enough for the rain to speckle her cheek. You lost or just testing God's aim? Stella's laugh cut through the roar, low and throaty, like smoke from a campfire you didn't want to leave. She yanked open the door without asking, tossing her pack in the bed with a thud that said she trusted fate about as much as Sadie did. Neither. Just need a dry spot before this deluge turns me into a drowned rat. Name Stella. You got a name? Or should I call you guardian angel? Sadie. She shifted into drive, the truck lurching forward as if eager to escape the pull of that gaze. Up close, Stella smelled like wet earth and vanilla, some cheap body spray clinging to her collar. Her jacket hung open over a faded gray tee that stuck to the curve of her ribs. Jeans tucked into boots caked in mud from God knows where. Sadie stole a glance. Then another, blaming the slick roads for the way her pulse kicked up. They drove in that electric silence broken only by the radio's static-laced country croon, something about lost highways and lovers left behind. Seattle's outskirts blurred past, strip malls with flickering vacancy signs. Coffee stands shuddered against the gale. The Puget Sound a gray churn in the distance. Sadie kept her eyes on the road. But Stella filled the cab like she owned it. Legs stretched out. One boot tapping a rhythm that synced with the rain. You military? Stella asked finally, nodding at the sticker peeling off Sadie's dash, a faded eagle with crossed rifles. Was. You. Same poison. Stella's voice dipped. Laced with that rayage soldiers used to mask the ache. Spec Ops medic. Saw enough blood to last 10 lifetimes. You. Infantry. Lost the knee to an IED. Now I'm just. Drifting. Sadie flexed her bad leg. The phantom twinge a reminder that pain didn't always stay where you left it. Stella's gaze flicked down. Then back up. Soft but searching. Drifting's better than drowning in place. I know that much. The sign for the Last Chance Motel loomed like a bad omen, its vacancy light buzzing defiantly. The storm had worsened, wind whipping branches like accusations across the lot. Sadie pulled in, gravel crunching under tires worn thin from too many miles. 1 room or 2, the clerk drawled through a plexiglass window, his eyes bleary from whatever shift dragged into the witching hour. 1, Stella said before Sadie could think. Her tone brooking no argument. Storms got the roads closed anyway. Safety in numbers. Right? Sadie nodded. Handing over cash, plastic was for people with futures. The room was a time capsule of faded glory, orange shag carpet. A bed with a dip in the middle like it remembered every regret. And a TV bolted to the wall playing infomercials on mute. Rain lashed the window, turning the world outside into a watercolor smear. They stripped off wet layers in awkward tandem. Towels from the bathroom doing little to chase the chill. Sadie peeled down to a sports bra and boxers. Her scars mapping stories across her thigh, jagged pink lines like lightning strikes. Stella, in a tank top that hugged her like a second skin, had tattoos blooming from her shoulders, a phoenix rising from dog tags. Ink faded from salt and sun. She caught Sadie looking and didn't flinch. Battle ribbons, she said simply, sinking onto the bed's edge. Yours? Sadie traced her knee with a finger. The prosthetic hidden under sweatpants she'd tugged on. Trophies. She joined Stella. The mattress sagging under their weight. Close enough to feel the heat radiating off her like a promise. Talk came easy then. The kind that uncoiled in the dark. Stella spoke of cobble nights. Stitching wounds by flashlight. The way fear tasted like copper on her tongue. Sadie shared the desert's endless sand. How silence after a firefight was louder than bombs. Laughter slipped in two. Stella's imitation of a CO's nasally bark had Sadie doubling over. Ribs aching like they hadn't in years. You ever wonder if we're built wrong? Stella murmured later. The room lit only by the motel's sodium glow filtering through curtains. She lay on her side, facing Sadie. Braids fanned across the pillow like dark rivers. Like, the army teaches duty. But what about the rest? The wanting? Sadie's breath caught. The air thickening. Stella's hand brushed her arm, accidental. Maybe. But neither pulled away. All the time, Sadie whispered. Her voice rough as gravel. Duty's a chain. But this. She let her fingers trace the phoenix on Stella's shoulder. Ink warm under her touch. This feels like breaking free. Their eyes met. And the storm outside paled. Stella leaned in first. Slow. Giving Sadie every out, but Sadie surged forward. Lips crashing like waves on rocky shore. It was salt and need. Hands mapping scars and curves. Breaths mingling in gasps that drowned the thunder. Clothes shed in a tangle. Bodies pressing close under threadbare sheets. Exploring with the reverence of soldiers who'd lost too much to waste a moment. Stella's touch was fire, fingers trailing Sadie's spine. Lips brushing the hollow of her throat. Drawing moans that echoed like confessions. Sadie arched into her. Tasting vanilla and rain on Stella's skin. The world narrowing to the slide of thigh against thigh. The urgent rhythm that built like a crescendo. They moved together. Fierce and tender. Whispers of amour and stay lost in the downpour. Climax hit like a shockwave. Bodies shuddering in unison. Leaving them spent and tangled. Hearts pounding in sync. As the rain eased to a patter. Stella traced lazy circles on Sadie's back. That wasn't just shelter, she said softly. Voice laced with wonder. No, Sadie agreed. Pressing a kiss to her collarbone. That was home. Morning broke gray and reluctant. Coffee from the motel's ancient percolator bitter on their tongues. They lingered over it at the rickety table. Knees brushing under formica. Sharing slices of lives they'd kept locked away. Stella talked about her childhood in Baton Rouge, gumbo Sundays with her mama. The sting of coming out in a town where love like theirs was whispered sin. Sadie opened up about her folks in rural Ohio. The farm that smelled of hay and hypocrisy. How enlisting was escape dressed as patriotism. You're heading to Portland? Stella asked. Stirring sugar she didn't need. Sadie nodded. Watching the spoon swirl like her thoughts. Yeah. Got a cousin there with a couch and no questions. You? Seattle proper. Friends got a dive bar gig waiting. Bartending pays the bills. And the tips by forgetting. Stella's smile didn't reach her eyes this time. But last night. Made me think maybe forgetting's overrated. They packed slow. Reluctant. The room feeling smaller with goodbye looming. At the door. Sadie pulled Stella close. Foreheads touching. This doesn't have to end here. Stella's laugh was soft. Pained. Duty calls? Soldier. But yeah. Text me. Portland's not that far. Numbers exchanged. A kiss that tasted like promise. And they parted, Sadie southbound. Stella north. The highway stretching like a vein between them. Weeks blurred into a rhythm Sadie hadn't known she craved. Texts turned to calls. Late-night voices bridging miles. Sharing the mundane and the raw. Stella's bar stories, rowdy tech bros spilling IPAs. The quiet drag queen who tipped in poetry. Sadie's Portland grind, barista shifts at a hipster cafe in the Pearl District. Steam hissing like old wounds. Her knee aching on rainy days that reminded her of that motel night. They met halfway first. A weekend in Olympia. Where evergreens whispered secrets and craft brew flowed like confessions. Hand in hand through farmers' markets. Fingers laced under cafe tables. Bodies rediscovering each other in a borrowed cabin that smelled of pine and possibility. Stella's laugh filled the spaces Sadie hadn't known were empty. Her touch a balm on scars both seen and unseen. But shadows crept in. Subtle as fog off the sound. Stella dodged questions about her ex, Jenna. A name dropped once like a grenade pin pulled. Ancient history, she'd say. Changing the subject to Sadie's latest tattoo sketch. A compass rose pointing true north. Sadie let it slide. Too afraid of shattering the fragile thing blooming between them. Fall deepened. Leaves turning the I-5 corridor into a blaze of red and gold. Sadie drove up for Stella's birthday. A surprise with wildflowers and a playlist of songs that made them both cry, Lucinda Williams crooning about car wheels on a gravel road. The bar was a haze of neon and nostalgia. Stella behind the stick in a flannel that hugged her like an old friend. Pouring shots with a wink that said she owned the night. That evening, after closing, they stumbled into Stella's cramped apartment above the bar, exposed brick walls papered with band posters. A bed piled with quilts from her mama's attic. Laughter turned to urgency. Clothes shed in a trail from door to dawn. Stella's hands were reverent, mapping Sadie's freckles like constellations. Her mouth hot and insistent at the curve of Sadie's hip. Sadie gasped. Fingers threading through braids. Pulling Stella closer until boundaries blurred in a haze of sweat and sighs. They crested together. Slow and shattering. Whispers of forever tangled in sheets. Lying thereafter. Stella's head on Sadie's chest. Heartbeat a steady drum. I love you, Sadie murmured. The words slipping free like breath. Stella stilled. Then lifted her head. Eyes stormy. Don't. Not yet. The words hung. Sharp as wire. Sadie pulled back. Searching that face she'd memorized. Why? Because love's a battlefield. Sadie. And I'm still dodging mines. Stella's apartment felt like a sanctuary one night. A minefield the next. Sadie woke to the scent of chicory coffee, Stella's Louisiana roots bleeding through, and found her at the window. Staring at the pre-dawn gray over Capitol Hill. Seattle's skyline loomed. All glass and ambition. A far cry from the bayou Stella romanticized in her stories. You okay? Sadie asked. Slipping arms around her waist. Chin on her shoulder. Stella leaned back. But her body was tense. A coiled spring. Just ghosts. Jenna texted last night. Wants to talk. The name landed like a gut punch. Sadie stepped away. Crossing her arms over the tank top she'd slept in. Jenna. Your ex. Yeah. Stella turned. Her face a mask cracking at the edges, full lips tight. Eyes evading. We were together 3 years. Before the army knew. Before everything went to hell. She bailed when it got real. Said she couldn't handle the questions from her family. Her church. Sadie's chest tightened. Not with jealousy exactly. But the ache of seeing Stella's armor dent. And now she wants back in? After what she did? Stella shrugged. Pouring coffee with hands that shook just a fraction. People change. Or say they do. She handed Sadie a mug. Their fingers brushing, electric. But fleeting. I told her no. But it stirred shit up. They spent the day wandering Pike Place. The market's chaos a bomb, fishmongers hurling salmon like acrobats. Street musicians plucking banjos for spare change. Sadie bought Stella a bouquet of lavender from a stall run by a grizzled vet with stories in his scars. They ate clam chowder from sourdough bowls. Knees knocking under a cafe table. laughing about the tourist who mistook them for sisters. But under it, the current hummed, unspoken fears of loving someone who'd already been burned. That night, over takeout pho from a hole in the wall on Broadway, Stella cracked open. Jenna was my first real thing. High school sweethearts in a town that'd rather stone us than celebrate. We joined up together. Thought the army'd be our shield. But DADT lingered in the bones. You know? Whispers. Investigations. She folded first, said it was for us. To keep one of us safe. Left me picking up the pieces in a foxhole. Sadie listened. Rage simmering for this woman she'd never meet. That's not love. That's cowardice. Maybe. Stella's voice was small. Vulnerable in a way that twisted Sadie's heart. But it taught me walls work. Until you. They made love then. Slow and deliberate. Like sealing a pact. Sadie kissed every inch of Stella's ink. Tongue tracing the phoenix as if willing it to rise anew. Stella responded with a hunger that bordered on desperation. Nails raking Sadie's back. Legs wrapping tight as if to anchor them both. It was worship and war. Bodies slick and straining. Breaths ragged with "I need you" and "don't leave." Release came in waves. Leaving them boneless. Tears mingling on pillows. Portland called Sadie back Monday. Her shift at the coffee shop a grind of lattes and small talk. But the texts kept coming, Stella's memes about bar fights. Sadie's photos of Willamette sunsets. They planned Thanksgiving, Sadie's cousin's place. A potluck with strangers who wouldn't pry. Hope bloomed. Fragile as first snow. Then the call came. 2 weeks out. Sadie's phone buzzed at 2 a.m. Stella's name lighting the screen like a flare. Sadie? Shit. I can't do this. Heart plummeting. Sadie sat up in her studio apartment. The city humming outside like indifferent machinery. Can't do what? Talk to me. Jenna showed up. At the bar. Drunk. Desperate. Said she's sorry. That she's out now, paraded me around her therapy group like a trophy. And God. Sadie. Part of me wanted to believe her. The easy part. Betrayal hit like shrapnel. Hot and embedding deep. You slept with her? Silence stretched. Damning. Yeah. Once. Thought it'd close the door. But it just ripped everything open. I can't drag you into this mess. You're too good. Too whole. Sadie's vision blurred. Tears scalding. Whole? You think you're broken? We're both patched together. Stella. That's what makes this real. Her voice cracked. Raw as exposed wire. But you chose her ghost over us. No, God. No. It's me. I'm the ghost. Stella's sob echoed. A sound that haunted Sadie's dreams for months. I love you. Sadie. That's why I have to let go. Before I ruin you. The line went dead. Leaving Sadie in the dark. Chest heaving like she'd run a marathon through hell. She didn't sleep. Just stared at the ceiling cracks mapping her heart's fractures. Duty. She'd learned in the sandbox. Was following orders even when they gutted you. But this? This was surrender. Days bled into weeks. A numb haze. Sadie threw herself into work. The cafe's espresso machine her confessor, grinding beans with vicious twists. Frothing milk until it screamed. Friends noticed. Her cousin Mia pulling her aside after a forced dinner, roast chicken and awkward silences in a Victorian row house off Alberta Street. Talk to me. Sod. You're fading. So she did. Words tumbling like loose rounds, the motel rain. Stolen weekends. The knife twist of goodbye. Mia listened. Her own queer journey etched in laugh lines and a wife who baked pies like apologies. Healing's not linear. Kid. It's a zigzag. But you don't walk it alone. Sadie tried. Therapy sessions in a strip mall office. The counselor's voice a drone on PTSD and attachment wounds. Runs along the river. Knee protesting but pushing through. Willamette's current mirroring her turmoil. She deleted Stella's number. Then fished it back from trash. Thumb hovering over send 100 times. Christmas came garish and lonely. Portland's lights twinkling like fall stars. Sadie volunteered at a shelter downtown. Serving turkey to vets with eyes like hers, hollow. Haunted. One night. A woman with braided hair and a phoenix tattoo shuffled through the line. Not Stella. But close enough to wrench a gasp. It forced the purge, letters burned in a backyard fire pit. Words of rage and hate curling to ash. Spring thawed the freeze. Cherry blossoms dusting the streets like confetti for second chances. Sadie dated, a barista with blue hair and easy smiles, but it fizzled. Lacking the spark that had ignited in rain. She inked the compass rose on her forearm. Needles bite a reminder, direction chosen. Not given. Then, June heat wave. A text from an unknown number, saw your post on the vet group. Need a coffee? S. Stella. Sadie's thumb trembled. Heart a war drum. Where? The cafe where it all might end, or begin again. Stella waited at a corner table. Braids loose. Face thinner but eyes alive with that river depth. No jacket now. Just a sundress that skimmed her knees. Tattoos peeking like secrets. You came, Stella breathed. Standing as Sadie approached. Couldn't not. Sadie slid into the seat. The air thick with unsaid. Talk flowed halting. Then steady, Stella's months in Seattle's underbelly, Jenna's relapse into denial. A bar brawl that landed her in ER with cracked ribs. Therapy of her own. Unraveling threads of shame woven deep. I was scared. Sadie. Of how much you made me feel. Thought duty meant protecting you from me. Sadie reached across. Fingers lacing tentative. Duty's bullshit when it costs your soul. We protect each other. Or we try. Forgiveness wasn't a word. But a look, the kind that stripped bare and rebuilt. They walked after. Through Waterfront Park. Gulls wheeling overhead. The river lazy under sun. Hands brushed. Then held. The touch a bridge over chasms crossed. Summer deepened their reclaiming. Weekends traded between cities, Stella in Portland. Learning Sadie's haunts, the food cart slinging falafel and craft tacos. Hikes up Forest Park where ferns whispered absolution. Sadie in Seattle. Navigating Stella's world, the bar's smoky camaraderie. Ferry rides to Bainbridge with salt wind tangling hair. Intimacy rebuilt brick by brick. First kisses chased. Testing waters. Then deeper. Hungrier in Stella's apartment. Hands rediscovering paths. One night. Under ceiling fan's lazy whirl. Stella knelt before Sadie. Eyes locked as her mouth traced fire down her belly. Tongue delving slow and sure. Sadie arched. Fingers in braids. The world splintering into stars, release a benediction. Tears of joy salting skin. They talked futures too. Not in grand gestures but quiet pacts, Sadie's dream of opening a coffee roastery for vets. Stella's whisper of culinary school. Blending Baton Rouge spice with Pacific bounty. Conflicts arose, Sadie's flare-ups of doubt. Nights when rain triggered motel memories laced with pain, Stella's walls rebuilding at family calls that dripped disapproval. But they faced them. Voices raised then soft. Apologies sealed with touches that said we're worth the fight. Fall brought decision, Stella transferring her bar gig south. A tiny apartment in Selwood they filled with mismatched furniture and dreams. The night they signed the lease. Over pizza on the floor amid boxes. Sadie pulled a small velvet pouch from her pocket. Inside. 2 silver rings, simple bands etched with phoenix and compass. Not marriage, she said. Voice thick. Not yet. But promise. We're each other's north. Stella slipped one on. Tears gleaming. Yeah. We are. Winter wrapped Portland in mist. The kind that softened edges and invited introspection. Sadie and Stella's apartment became a haven, exposed beams in the living room strung with fairy lights. A kitchen where Stella experimented with gumbo laced with Dungeness crab. The air rich with cayenne and laughter. Sadie roasted beans in a corner setup. The scent mingling with jazz from an old record player, Billie Holiday crooning lows that mirrored their nights tangled in flannel sheets. But peace was earned. Not given. Sadie's knee acted up in the damp. Turning simple walks into gritted teeth ordeals. One evening. After a failed hike in Tryon Creek. She snapped, hurling her cane across the room. The clatter echoing like accusation. I'm broken. Stella. A damn liability. Stella knelt amid the chaos. Hand steady on Sadie's face. Broken? You're the strongest person I know. That leg got you home? Let me carry you sometimes. She massaged the joint then. Oil-slick fingers working knots. Lips following with feather kisses up thigh. Sadie's anger melted into moans. Bodies joining in a dance of give and take, Stella's weight grounding her. Rhythm building to a shared crest that left them whispering gratitudes into skin. Stella's battle surfaced too. A call from Baton Rouge, her mama. Voice frail over the line. Hinting at church friends who'd heard things. Stella hung up mid-sentence. Pacing the kitchen like a caged panther. They want me to come home. Pray away the devil in me. Sadie pulled her close. The stove's warmth at their backs. Your home's here. With me. But if you need to go. I do. Stella's resolve hardened. Eyes fierce. To tell them goodbye to that version of me. The drive south was a gauntlet, I-5 unfurling like a scar. Motels blurring into memory. Baton Rouge sweltered even in December. Bayous sluggish under Spanish moss. Stella's childhood home was shotgun style. Porch sagging with potted ferns. The air thick with magnolia and unspoken grief. Her mama met them at the door, Evelyn. 60 with silver-streaked braids and eyes like Stella's. Softened by years. No hugs. Just a stiff, come in, the living room a shrine to faded glory, cross-stitched samplers preaching love's narrow path. Photos of a younger Stella in Sunday dresses. Dinner was strained, red beans and rice steaming on floral plates. Conversation skirting edges. Evelyn's questions probed like scalpels, that friend of yours. Stella? She family? Until Stella set down her fork. Voice steady as rebar. She's more? Mama. Sadie's my love. My partner. And I'm done hiding. The room iced over. Evelyn's face crumpling like wet newsprint. The Bible says love your neighbor. Sadie is that. Judge not, lest you be judged. Stella's hand found Sadie's under the table. Squeeze a lifeline. Evelyn's tears came then. Not in rage but sorrow, a mother's grief for the daughter she'd half lost. I raised you better. But you're my blood. No absolution. But a crack in the wall, a hesitant hug at the door. Words murmured like prayer. Be safe out there. The drive back was cathartic. Windows down. Wind whipping confessions free. Stella cried. Then laughed. Head on Sadie's shoulder at a rest stop under sodium lights. That was harder than Fallujah. But you did it. We did. Sadie's kiss was salt-kissed. Deepening in the truck's cab. Hands roaming until fogged windows hid their urgency, fingers deft. Breaths quick. A quicksilver release that sealed the victory. Back in Portland. Life layered on. Sadie's roastery took shape, a Kickstarter funded by fellow vets. A space in the Central East Side with brick walls and exposed ducks. Opening day buzzed, free pours of Ethiopian Yirgacheffe. Stella manning the counter in an apron tied loose. Her smile drawing crowds. Pride Month arrived. Rainbow flags fluttering from Alberta's shops. And they marched, hands linked. Signs reading love as the ultimate duty. The crowd's roar was thunder. But Stella's grip was home. Yet crisis loomed. Insidious. Stella's bar owners in Seattle called, a buyout offer. Fat check to expand south. Tempting. But it meant long hours. Nights away rebuilding what Jenna's shadow had tainted. Doubt crept, arguments over schedules. Silence as heavy as winter fog. One night. After a double shift left Stella bone-tired. She lashed out, you're always at that roastery. Sadie. Like I'm the side quest. Hurt flared. Words weapons, and you're running from us every time you chase that old life. Doors slammed. Sadie crashing on Mia's couch. The rivers murmur her only lullaby. 3 days of radio silence. A chasm widening. Then, a knock at midnight, Stella. Rain-soaked again. Eyes red-rimmed. I sold the gig. For good. Can't lose you to what-ifs. Sadie pulled her in. The fight dissolving into frenzy, clothes shed in the hall. Bodies slamming against walls. Desperate and devouring. Stella's mouth was everywhere. Teeth grazing collarbone. Fingers curling deep until Sadie shattered. Name a litany. They collapsed laughing. Spent. The storm outside a symphony to their reunion. Healing deepened with seasons. Spring brought Stella to culinary classes at Portland Community College. Her knife skills from med days translating to chiffonade basil like poetry. Sadie mentored at the VA. Her story a beacon for vets adrift. They adopted a mutt, Rue. A scruffy terrier with one ear flop, walks along the esplanade turning into rituals of hand-holding and quiet dreams. Summer solstice. They drove to the Oregon coast. Cannon Beach's haystack sentinel under moon. A blanket spread. Wine uncorked. Stella pulled a notebook, pages filled with recipes named for them, Sadie's heart latte. Stella's rice bisque. This is us, she said. Voice thick. Layered. Spicy. Worth the burn. Sadie's ring glinted as she drew Stella close. Forever's not a word. But it's ours. Their lovemaking was ocean-tide, slow swells building to crash. Bodies arching under stars. Touches lingering like vows. Whispers wove with waves, I choose you. Every dawn. Fall wove maturity's threads. Evelyn visited, awkward at first. Bearing pecan pie and tentative questions about the roastery. Over coffee. She watched Sadie and Stella's ease. The casual arm around waist. And something shifted, a story shared of her own hidden youth. A college flame silenced by fear. I see now, she said. Tears unshed. Love like yours. It's holy. Winter's cusp brought the apex, a joint proposal. Not on bended knee but over breakfast. Rings exchanged amid eggs and mimosas. No church. Just a backyard ceremony under Portland's evergreens, Mia officiating. Rue in a bow tie. Vows recited like field dispatches, in peace and fire. I stand with you. But life? That great leveler. Tested anew. Sadie's knee surgery loomed, titanium upgrade. Months of rehab. Fear gnawed, dependency's shadow. Stella held vigil in the sterile wait. Post-op haze finding them curled in hospital bed. Morphine dreams blending with real touches, fingers interlaced. Promises murmured against fevered skin. Recovery was grind, PT sessions in a gym echoing with grunts. Stella's coaxing voice the carrot to pain stick. One night. Frustration peaked, Sadie hurling a water bottle. I can't be this weak. Stella caught it mid-air. Eyes unyielding. Weak? You're fighting. That's strength. She knelt. Massaging the scar. Lips following, soft. Insistent. Arousal stirring despite the ache. It built gentle. Stella's mouth a revelation. Sadie's release a sob of surrender. Spring bloomed renewal. Sadie's stride steadied. The roastery thriving with pop-ups at farmers' markets. Stella's first catering gig, a queer wedding downtown. Gumbo lauded in reviews. They volunteered together at the shelter. Stories swapped with those still adrift, proof that duty evolved. From orders to chosen bonds. One evening, as twilight painted the Willamette gold, they sat on their porch swing. Rue at feet. Stella leaned in. Breath warm. That night in the rain. It wasn't shelter. It was salvation. Sadie kissed her. Slow and sure. And every night since. In the quiet. Under a sky vast as possibility. They held the truth, love wasn't absence of war. But courage in its wake. Two soldiers. Once seeking refuge. Now architects of home, scarred. Whole. Eternally entwined. The years folded like well-worn maps. Each crease a story etched deeper. By 35. Sadie's roastery had outgrown its east side nook. Spilling into a full cafe on Mississippi Avenue, veteran baristas slinging blends named for battles won quiet, resilience roast. Anchor espresso. The walls bore murals of olive branches twisting into coffee vines. Commissioned from a trans artist who'd found her footing post-service. Sadie moved with a subtle hitch still. But it was rhythm now. Not restraint, a dancer's limp in life's waltz. Stella's culinary path veered passionate, a food truck. Phoenix Fire. Parked at festivals from Coachella to the Oregon Country Fair. Fusion feasts of crawfish etouffee with foraged mushrooms drawing lines around the block. Her braids had silver threads now. Woven like wisdom. And her laugh carried freer. Echoing through their craftsman home in Montevilla, rambler with a yard gone wild. Raised beds bursting tomatoes and herbs. Evelyn visited often. Her transformation a quiet miracle, Bible studies traded for book club debates on Audre Lorde. A pride pin on her purse glinting defiant. Y'all make an old woman believe in redemption, she'd say. Shelling peas on the back stoop. Rue begging scraps. But the arc of their love wasn't linear ascent, it looped through valleys. Each teaching resilience as grit. At 32. Stella's diagnosis came: endometriosis. The kind that twisted months into pain's vice. Nights curled fetal. Sadie's arms her harbor. Whispers of "breathe with me" sinking labored inhales. Treatments blurred, shots that bruised hips. Surgeries leaving faint lines like new tattoos. Stella's fire dimmed. Self-doubt a thief. What if I can't give you kids? What if I'm half a partner? Sadie's response was ritual: breakfast in bed. Poached eggs on sourdough. Her hands mapping Stella's body anew, fingers delving gentle. Mouth coaxing blooms of pleasure until tension shattered into sighs. You're everything. Kids or not. This is our legacy. They talked adoption dreams. Fostering vets, kids adrift like they once were, seeds planted. Not pressured. Sadie's shadow reared too, a flashback triggered at a VA gala. Fireworks mimicking mortars. Sending her crashing through a restroom door. Hyperventilating on tile. Stella found her. Voice anchor: ground me. 5 things you see. Porcelain sink. Stella's steady gaze, love's litany pulling her back. That night? Reclaiming, Stella atop. Slow grind building to frenzy. Sadie's nails scoring back as release roared, release from ghosts. Crisis crested at 40, a fire at the food truck. Grease blaze gutting phoenix fire to char. Insurance lagged. Debts mounted like sand dunes. Stella spiraled. Bar shift swallowing pride. Her hands raw from scrubbing strangers' spills. I'm failing us, she'd mutter. Staring at blackened pots. Sadie rallied, crowdfunding laced with their story. Community potlucks turning yard into feast, neighbors sharing curries and tamales. Tales of their own risings. The rebuild became communal, welders from Stella's army days framing a sleeker rig. Sadie's baristas brewing funds. Relaunch night. Understrung bulbs at Tom McCall waterfront. Stella served inaugural bowls. Tears salting roux. Sadie pulled her aside. Into shadows, you rose again. Their kiss ignited. Hands urgent under apron, fingers slick. Breath stifled against neck. Climax a spark in the dark. Healing wove humanistic threads, mentoring circles at the cafe. Queer vets sharing circles of trust, stories of betrayal sting. Love's labor. They sponsored a scholarship. Shelter fund. For LGBTQ plus service members transitioning home, nights sifting applications. Hearts swelling at futures forged. At 45. Their ceremony's anniversary dawned misty. They renewed under the same oaks. Rings refitted looser on fingers lined with time. Vows evolved, in scars and stars. I choose you still. Honeymoon redux, road trip retracing that rainy hitch. Ending at the Last Chance Motel, renovated now. But the beds dip familiar. They made love laughing. Bodies softer. Touches surer, Stella's tongue tracing laugh lines. Sadie's hands cupping breasts heavy with years. Union a symphony of gasps and groans. Enduring as tides. Legacy bloomed late, fostering Jamal. A 16-year-old trans kid ejected from his Tacoma home post-discharge dreams dashed by dysphoria. His arrival was chaos, sneakers strewn. Vegan debates at dinner, but joy, teaching him knife skills. Sadie drilling self-defense forms in the yard. Jamal's eyes, once shuttered, sparked at pride floats. His art adorning truck panels. Evelyn's passing at 78 was gentle, hospice bed by bayou. Hands clasped in final peace, tell Stella. Proud. Graveside. Under live oaks. Stella scattered pralines. Voice breaking, you taught me love's quiet fight. Grief's wake clarified, a memoir co-written. Rain and rise. Chapters alternating voices, motel spark to enduring flame. It sold modest. But readings drew kindred, soldiers embracing. Walls tumbling. At 50. They sat porch swings creaking. Rue's successor, a wiry shepherd named Duty, curled at feet. Portland's skyline twinkled. Willamette a silver thread. Stella's head on Sadie's shoulder. Fingers laced rings glinting. That night, Sadie murmured. Taught more than duty. It taught grace. Stella's smile. Etched deep, and us. In twilight's embrace. 2 soldiers, sheltered no more, wrote the human hymn, love. Not conquest. The truest valor. Scars faded to stories. Duty to devotion. Their arc a beacon, proof that from storm's fury. Homes are hewn. Hearts unbreakable.